Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are joining us from, and welcome to this third session of Out of the Wings in Focus, Black Playwrights of the Spanish and Portuguese-speaking worlds. On this final day of the week-long Winter Warmer, celebrating and exploring theatre in translation, hosted online by the Omnibus Theatre here in London. My name is Dr. Ramiro Andrade. I'm an actor, director, educationist, theatre maker, and translator from Portuguese, also a member of Out of the Wings Collective. I will be chairing this session focusing on Afro-Lusophone playwrights and their theatre in translation. Just before I introduce my guests, some quick Zoom housekeeping. This session is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel in the coming days. The automatic captioning facility is available, and if you wish to switch this off, or you can do it so through your Zoom settings. Towards the end of the session, we'll invite questions from the audience. So please join and use the Q&A function on your Zoom screens for this. You may do this throughout the session. You also have the option to upvote the people's questions if the questions are very similar to the ones you want to ask. And without much further ado, let me introduce our wonderful panel for today. So today with us, we have Dr. Eunice Ferreira, Associate Professor of Theatre at Skidmore College in New York, is a scholar artist whose research focuses on intersections of theatrical performance and issues of language, race, class, gender, culture, and national identity, with a special focus on Cabo Verde, West Africa. She has produced, directed, and choreographed a variety of plays and musicals, including a multilingual premiere of The Orphan Sea by Caridad Svich. She has published in the US-based and international journals, and is the vice president for the Black Theatre Association. Her first book, Creole Performance, Remapping Creole and Mixed Race Theatre, will be published by Vanderbilt Press. Her co-translation of Alone on Stage by Mario Lucio Souza is the first ever English language publication of a play from Cape Verde Islands. She is the daughter of Cape Verdean immigrants and is forever grateful to all those who came before her. Also together with us, we have Dr. Ramiro Silveira, who is a Brazilian director, researcher, lecturer, and actor trainer. He's known for his innovative theatre process, subject of his PhD thesis called Theatre Playground, a study on presence and relation based on rhythm, movement, and multicultural references to inspire creative connections. Since 2001, he has been using this technique to direct theatre and run acting and directing workshops in many different countries. Working professionally as a theatre director since 1995, Ramiro has directed more than 30 plays in Brazil and abroad, and has received several awards included in Volkswagen Theatre Award and the Brazil International Press Award here in the UK, for his achievement as an international theatre director. Now in 2018, he was the organizer and project creator of the book Nelson Rodrigues Selected Plays, published by Oberon Books. Since 2015, Ramiro is the head of BA World Performance course at East 15 University of Essex, UK. And finally, with us, we have Ginha Moraes, who is an Angolan, Portuguese-born, and East London-bred writer performer. She writes both for theatre and for screen. Her writing is highly inspired by Angola history and mythology, as well as personal experience of being a Black woman. Her first play, Faraca, was an exploration of the relationships between Angola and Brazil through capoeira. And her most recent work is a mockumentary comedy web series, which is about full hair, available on YouTube. So now, shall we start with Dr. Eunice Ferreira? I would like to ask you about your research on especially Afro-Lusophone theatre from Africa, and specifically your work on theatre from Cabo Verde. Thank you for joining us today, Eunice.
Yes, thank you, Elmira. And can you hear me okay?
Yes, fantastic.
Okay, great. Okay, just wanted to make sure. So first of all, thank you, and thank you to William Gregory, who reached out on Twitter to me about a year and a half ago. So thank you, William, for following up, and Almiro for your invitation. And thank you to all the other artists and scholars who are on this panel with me, and the rest of you who have already spoken, and the ways that I'm finding so many similar threads throughout our work. So let's start off with a map. This might be a map like you've never seen before. Have any of you ever seen this map? I don't think so, because my son colored it. So when my son was very young, he was given this assignment, and this is sort of a typical assignment that elementary school children might receive, to label and color in countries, right? You can tell by the scribbling, he was very, very young when he did this. But, I just want to point out the intervention that my young Cape Verdean son, half Cape Verdean son did. He noticed, as in so many other map depictions of Africa, that Cabo Verde was not on the map. So what did my young son do? He took his pencil and he drew in Cabo Verde as best as he could. And in many ways, it's a little bit of a metaphor for the work that I'm doing, and that so many of us do too in our work. And that is putting Cape Verde on the map. And mapping the work of Cape Verdean theater artists. And mapping is really important. You know, as Almeida said, I'm the daughter of Cape Verdean immigrants. And I'm the daughter of Cape Verdean immigrants born in the United States, right? Because they traveled here. And already we've seen references to immigration and movement. And so many of those issues also show up in the work of Cape Verdean playwrights. So we're going to look at Cabo Verde a little bit here. I'm going to show you some images first, because after all, this is theater. So I'm going to show you some images, and then I'll come off of the slides to just talk a little bit more directly with you. But I'm excited to share work on Cabo Verde because I believe it provides this incredible opportunity and a unique opportunity to examine theater, performance, translation at the crossroads of Africa, Europe, and the Americas. It's also a place where I believe I have found in my research that these staged performances, theatrical practices, and also debates that take place in the newspaper, social media, can shape, reflect, and also challenge national and cultural identity, especially in a country where language is still a contentious issue regarding the orthography of Cape Verdean Creole, especially. And I'm excited because I think Cape Verdean theater also offers a unique contribution to theater studies in general, to Lusophone studies specifically, to African studies more broadly, to Cape Verdean studies, again, more specifically, to Creole studies, and to the still emerging field of mixed race studies. So I'm hopeful that Cape Verdean theater can also provide new imaginings for teaching, for research, for community and performance. And there you can see a little shout out to some of my students in our translation and performance class at Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, New York. So it's just about noontime here where I am zooming in from. So in my first research working on my dissertation, I focused on post-independence, post-colonial Cape Verdean theater. And I just want to point out like three basic movements, and then I'll connect that and then move on to the playwright that I'm going to focus on today. So Cape Verde only gained its independence in 1975, right? Like Portugal was one of those last countries to like tenaciously hang on to their former colonies. And so one of the things that I noticed in one of the first groups to emerge in this post-independence movement is an attempt to create a theater practice by resisting the colonial legacy and searching out cultural expressions that had formerly been oppressed during the colonial era. So this is a group called Corda Cabo Verde, meaning Wake Up Cape Verde. This is the founding director, Francisco Fragoso, Dr. Francisco Fragoso, who actually lives in Lisboa. That takes place in the 70s. And then I sort of moved to the 80s, where I saw a shift in groups trying to really reclaim and to mark out regional differences. So from island to island, as opposed to a Pan-African connection to establish identity. So this is the longest running theater group in Cape Verde. So I'm also trying to give a shout out. There's so many wonderful artists that I love. I can't talk about all of them. So this is a way for me to give a little quick shout out to a bunch of Cape Verdean artists. So this is Juventude Marcha, but they're not so Juventude anymore because they've been around for 35, 36 years now. They're a comedy troupe that functions in a spirit that's very similar to Commedia dell'arte. They pass on roles from family to family. The founding director, Jorge Martins, that you see there on the far left with the little beret on, all his children have performed in the troupe, and these three actors are part of the original members, and they're also educators. They're all teachers as well. I just want to point out this play really quickly, Preto no Branco, which actually takes place in Lisboa. It's one of the very few plays by Cape Verdean playwrights that don't take place on the islands. And here this play focuses on two brothers, one who's lighter skinned. So even though he's not really white passing, he's referred to as Branco. And then his older brother who is dark skinned. And they encounter one another. They're both homeless and destitute, living in Portugal. So here's a treatment of migration and what happens with the marking of race as one moves from one locale to another. And then finally, as we move into the 90s and a shift in government in Cape Verde, a changing in the flag from the Pan-African colors to red, white, and blue, we also see a sort of opening up and an attempt by theater artists, specifically on the island in São Vicente in the city of Mindelo, to connect with a global stage. And we see movement. So here's the port city. I think it's important that it's a port city. Mindelo was always a little bit more open to other influences. And so here we see a movement called Creolização, which is taking more canonical works, European canonical works, and adapting them to a Cape Verdean reality. So in the top left corner is Lorca's The House of Bernarda Alba, but they called it Casa Nha Bernarda Alba, so it's Creole. It was creolized. And then the bottom right-hand corner is a creolization of King Lear, which has a subtitle in Crioulo, right? So the title Rei Lear wasn't enough. They added in Cape Verdean Crioulo, Nhoreja Bacabessa, which means like, that guy, he's lost it. He's lost his mind. He's lost his head. And then we see a younger troupe influenced by a trend towards creolization, who did a queered reading of Romeo and Juliet, but in this case focused on the Julietas. So today I want to spend a few more minutes focusing on Mario Lúcio Souza, who's a playwright, a poet. Some of you may know him as a musician, a novelist, a lawyer, and for a 5-year period served as the former Minister of Culture in Cabo Verde. So as Almeida mentioned, Christina McMahon and I translated the first play from Cape Verde, and it's been published. So you can access that in Moving World. So I have that there for you. And I want to talk a little, so you can read that play, a play that I'm going to be working on. I need to finish this, I plan to do this summer, is another play by Mario Lúcio called Adão e as Sete Pretas de Ferrugem. So here, this play, do I have one more slide to show you? All right, so I'll show you this last image and then I'm going to go off the slide so I can just talk to you a little bit. But here you can see this is a promotional photograph with the titular character, Adão. And you can see he's sitting on a bidon. He's sitting on those barrels where we send things back, remittances to Cape Verde, and then they're reused. They're made into furniture. They're used to gather rainwater. And by his side is a suitcase, right? And he's looking out across the Atlantic, whether he's dreaming of where he's going or dreaming from whence he came. You know, is he in Portugal or is he in Cabo Verde? So let me stop screen sharing there. Almiro, I'm probably almost at the end of my time, aren't I? 2 more minutes?
2 more minutes.
Okay, so I'll try to do this. Oh, this is so tough, right? Because I just love these playwrights. I love this theater. I'm so enthusiastic about it. But so in recent years, efforts have been made to try to nurture a more original national dramaturgy. Now, already early in the day, we've heard about adaptations, and there's a beauty in adaptation, right? In a reclaiming and turning things upside down. But I think one thing in countries where there are few publications is that adaptations can be at the cost of nurturing a national dramaturgy. So I wanted to highlight Mario Lucio because these are incredibly highly original works that he's writing. And I think he offers ways to help expand and deepen how we can conceptualize global Creoleness or mixed race identities, how we might conceptualize or actually like destabilize. I believe his plays sort of destabilize race and ethnicity, whiteness and blackness, Portuguese and African, the colonized or the colonized, islands and the metropole. And in relation to this event, notions of a utopian Lusophonia, right? Of what is that enough to connect us? And when we use that term broadly, are we taking into consideration the very specific and important differences that mark out our experiences? So I'm just going to give you a 1-minute summary of this play, and then maybe in the question and answer, I can talk a little bit more about it. But the play is called Adão e os Sete Pretos de Ferrugem, and probably you can hear a little word play on there, right? That it's a play on the story of Branca Neva, right? And then Adão also sounds like the Portuguese word for dwarf as well. So in this play, Adão his father is Portuguese, father is white Portuguese, his mother is a Cape Verdean woman, and he's growing up before independence. And in that moment of independence, and he's born in Cabo Verde, but all of a sudden he becomes too branco, right? He becomes too white for his friends there. And then he goes back and forth in this sort of liminal space. We don't know if he's dreaming, if things are happening now. He goes back and forth between Cabo Verde and Portugal, although Cabo Verde is never really mentioned. And as he's traveling back and forth, we see how race is marked upon him in some different ways. And in Portugal, he reunites with some Cape Verdean friends, and he sets up this household kind of like in an imagined African village where he is going to set himself as the chief. So just like Snow White moves in with 7 men she doesn't even know, Adam also cohabitates with the Sete Pretos de Ferrugem. And I think you can see there in the title how they're playing with the notions of how Black these women are, right? They're not just Black, they're pretos de ferrugem, of like chimney ash. So I'm also playing with how I'm going to translate the title, maybe they'll be the blackety black women or the smoking black women. I'm going to have to play with that a little bit more. But the play ends with this nightmarish scene. And then Adam wakes up and he doesn't really know. Time and place have shifted. All of a sudden, his old nurse from Cabo Verde is by his side. And he reads this letter aloud, and I'll end with this. He goes, well, we all finally met, meaning in Portugal. We're all living together and we're all legal now. When you're finally coming here, coming to get to know the story of your father's country, we were all waiting for you. Queenie, university girl, trumpet girl, strings, and the hairdresser. Oh, and a big hug from Preta, who's actually a queer man in the play. And then Adam asks, but Mana, where am I? Mana smiles mysteriously and says, you're in your own country. In my country? But Mana, where am I? You're in your own country. In my country? But Mana, where am I? And he repeats the lines over and over again to black out. And this ambivalent ending of the play sort of mirrors the resistance of a Criollo identity from being fixed, an idea of Blackness and Lusophone identity, and Cabo Verde's unique colonial history and its geographical location, like you saw on my son's map, part of Africa and not part of Africa, is central to this negotiation of Cape Verdean identity and how the Republic of Cabo Verde positions itself even on the global stage. Lucio Souza writes predominantly in Portuguese, not Criollo, and he will not be limited by prescribed or politicized definitions of what constitutes Cape Verdean art. As the play ends with Adam repeating the question, "Where am I?" there seems to be no sense of relief from ambiguity. Audiences are left to wonder whether Adam was or if he's still dreaming. Is Adam in his birth country or is he in Portugal? Is he here or there or somewhere in the spaces in between? Thank you.
Thank you, Onisi. This was fantastic. And I want to congratulate you for all the work that you presented here, and especially for the translation of the title of Preto no Branco, the black and white thing. Fantastic. But now, moving swiftly on, I would like to call on Dr. Ramiro Silveira to talk on his directing of Grace Passou for Elise at the Brazilian Embassy in the UK, and how the Afro-Brazilian practices influence his own.
Yeah, hello.
Are you with us, Ramiro?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me well?
Yes.
First of all, to say that I wanted to carry on listening to Onisi. So interesting what she's bringing to us. I mean, I don't really know what goes on in Cabo Verde, and I should. And I feel that I really should. Well, I know you got a very little time here. I think what I wanted to approach here, I think it might be interesting, is since I came to UK, my whole experience kind of got a different flavor, got a completely different color, because I've been directing theater since 1995 in Brazil and I had a company there, and we had lots of artists, but I was producing Lusophone plays. Most of them were by Lusophone's playwrights for Lusophone Brazilian audience, getting all the references that the playwright was putting there. So it's like was kind of a straight communication. The playwright was writing in Brazilian Portuguese. I was staging in Brazilian Portuguese for a Brazilian Portuguese audience. Then things started to change when I started directing plays outside my country, outside Brazil. It started with Nelson Rodrigues. I did a production of The Wedding Dress in Oslo, in Norway, in a mix of English and Norwegian translation. And I started to realize that the audience wasn't really getting what I wanted them to get. And I started asking to myself how faithful I was being to the playwright's references. And I kept asking myself this question, and then I started kind of researching that when I started at East 15 University of Essex, on approaching Nelson Rodrigues in translation to English with my students, and because I had already a lot of experience with Nelson Rodrigues, I had directed Nelson Rodrigues' plays back in Brazil. I was trying to see how much I was being able to communicate what the author was trying to bring, and that was the seed, the source that made us get together. Almiro was part of the project, and Almiro is one of the translators that we made the Nelson Rodrigues collected plays. Ola Wings was helped us a lot in this project, and we launched the book. And in the middle of that, always asking myself about possibilities of translation, possibilities of how to translate a vibe, how to translate an energy. And that came through also the Grace Passot. That's what Almiro was asking me. And then I'm going to go straight to that. I know we have very little time. But then the Brazilian Embassy in London was also launching a book called Brazilian Contemporary Drama, with short play with plays written by Brazilian playwrights. And one of them was For Elise by Grace Passot. And that was the one I chosen to direct in the embassy. And I'm always open for, I want to tell the stories. And this is I think is the hard part. I want to tell the stories kind of following the vibe that the playwright had when he wrote the stories. And of course, in Grace Passot had a specific vibe when he wrote the For Elise. To start with, for example, and I had the majority of my audience were English speakers, and to start by the name, for example, For Elise. Why the play was called For Elise? Nobody would have, actually, if you're not Brazilian, you don't really have the reference of what the For Elise is, what For Elise means. For Elise is the Beethoven music, and actually what happens in Brazil is we don't have central gas. So we need to buy the gas in canisters. And there is a truck that goes over the streets selling canisters of gas. And what announces the truck is the truck plays the Beethoven For Elise. I don't know why they've chosen this music, but this is the music played by the truck. And normally the trucks goes around in the house in suburban areas of the city. Because of course, in the Porsche areas, you would have someone to deliver the gas to you. But if you need to go outside and buy the canister directly from the truck, it's more related to the peripheric areas of the city. It's more related to the suburban areas of the city. So straight away, when the play is called For Elise, and when you start listening to For Elise music, you straight away place yourself in a social context. So how would I do that in a translation? How would I do that for an English audience? I have no idea. I'm still asking myself. And that's I think a question that we've been discussing a lot, me, Almiro, the other wings, about translation. Almiro was one of the translators of Nelson Rodrigues as well. So how to the references are there, probably in the footnotes as well. When you see the translation, you got the footnote that I think feeds the director in the way it has to be staged. But yeah, I've got a very little time here. But what I think I wanted to bring to this discussion, what I think I want to steer a little bit, relates to references, relates how to bring references that to an audience who doesn't have these references, and how you can be faithful to a playwright, faithful to a subject that playwright is focusing, faithful to an idea the playwright is trying to spread, to communicate to an audience. And I don't have an answer, but I think this is an interesting topic for discussion. Thank you, Almiro.
That is fantastic, Almiro, and that is the most valid point there, because that's the whole point of translating pieces, is to bring that context to a new audience, to a new home, to a new set of translators that will then see that play, they'll then interpret that. But thank you so much. And please, guys, if you are already thinking of your questions, pop them in the Q&A box as soon as you have them. And I will then move swiftly on to our very last panelist, Zinga Moraes, and her work on Firecracker with an entire female Lusophone cast, including herself. Zinga, please join us. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you see me?
Yes.
Hey, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with everyone who's spoken. I'm so excited to be here. So yeah, your question was about what it was like as a Lusophone writer performer in England, and especially having a cast of just fully Lusophone female. Do you know what? It was one of the most exciting things I've ever done in my life. And where do I begin? So my story is I came to England when I was 9, and I think that plays a massive part into my work as an artist, because I feel like what we know of theatre in England, I don't have that much experience when it comes to Lusophone theatre outside of England, so I just know what I know from here. And when it comes to like African work or work made by Black playwrights, I would always just see the representation of Nigerian and Jamaican or Ghanaian writers, which they're amazing. But it always felt like I was isolated in a way, because my stories were not heard from a perspective of someone who has lived a life in England. So I always thought my aim would be to do something like that. And so I started doing all my research on what I could do, and I've always been in love with Queen Jinga, and my grandma would always talk to me about her, but I only actually learned about her when I was 18. But the weird thing is I've always known about her my entire life, but I only really realized who she was when I was 18, because it was the time where I went to university, and it was the first time I felt like an outsider, because I've always lived in London, and we all know London is diverse, and you know people from everywhere, and you don't feel like, oh, I'm odd because I'm Black, or I'm odd because I speak Portuguese at home. But when I went to university, that's when I felt othered. So I was like, I need to find out who I am, so that the next time someone says anything about me, I can just answer and be like, put you in your place. So I started reading up about Queen Jinga, and I'd always listened to Ajingas. They're my favorite artist. If you haven't heard about them, go listen to their music. They're fantastic. And I wanted to write something about her. And at first it was going to be a one-woman play. It was just going to be me. But then that idea kind of dwindled, because I'm trying to write something about my community, and how can it just come from me? So I started reading about her, and the book that I got was actually a children's book. I wonder if it's here somewhere. Oh, it's probably in my other. Anyways, it was a children's book because it was like a dwindled down version of the history before I got into the meteor history. And in this children's book, it always kept coming back to capoeira. And I'm a big person when it comes to martial arts. I love martial arts. I've done karate since I was quite young. And I've always wanted to do a martial arts that was kind of African inspired and stuff like that. So I started doing research, and there's so many ways of the origin. There's so many different stories of the origins of capoeira. But in this book, one of the stories was that it came from Zumbi, his descendants were part of Queen Jinga's, not tribe, we don't call it tribe, but Quilombo. And so I was like, this is my story. And I wanted it to be about women, so Queen Jinga. And then this was also the time where Marielle Franco had just been murdered. And I was like, these are two women who fight for their people, who are up there talking about, you know, our rights, and who won't stop until they get things done for us. And I was like, this is perfect. So I wanted to do a story in homage to both these women, but I was kind of afraid of doing a story about Marielle Franco, because I didn't want to make any fabrications of her story. So I kind of wrote a story about a different woman, but everything was sort of based on her, and I still made homage of her towards the end of my play. But anyways, I don't know how much time I have, but yeah. So I want to actually talk about how it was like getting my cast together. First of all, when we did the audition and I was talking to my director, he kind of wanted to get people from Spotlight, you know, how to get actors, and you get like professionals. But I was like, a lot of people like me, Lusophone people, don't know what Spotlight is, don't have access to these things. I know that, yes, there are many of us who do go to drama school and stuff, but some of us genuinely don't know what drama school is and don't know it's a possibility. So I was like, do you know what? No, let's look for these people on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. Let's just keep drilling. And what we did was we found all these people, and the audition, and Amiru, you were there, and it was so great to have you there and to have had you throughout the whole process of my play, because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't know what I was doing, because I was writing about Angola. I've never been to Angola, so everything I know was from my parents or Google, and there's only so much Googling you can do. And Bahia, which is where you are from and Lilian is from. So I needed people like you guys, because that's where the authenticity and the reality of these places is going to come. So yeah, so when I did this audition, it wasn't an audition. It was a space for us all to meet. There was about 10 of us, if I'm not wrong, maybe more. It was just meeting. It was us sharing energies, sharing ourselves, being free. It didn't feel like anyone was being judged on their ability in anything. It was just us all looking at each other and being like, this is the first time we have all been in a room together and we all share similar stories. Even if we come from Cape Verde, Brazil, Angola, Mozambique, we still have like a similar situation. And it was just such a beautiful thing. And I'm so grateful for having had that. We still have a WhatsApp group. We don't use it as much because you know how WhatsApp groups are. But every now and then people post things that they're doing, and it's just really nice to, you know, connect and stuff. I kind of wanted to read something really quickly. So the play has kind of, I felt like it grew legs bigger than me, because the ambition was to do something that just felt a lot more than what I could provide, if that makes any sense. But I knew that I had to do it, and it came from the right place in my heart. So I keep still dabbing in and out of it. But I rewrote it because I joined the Soho Writers Lab last year, and it changed completely. It became a play about, what was it? What do you call it? Gig theatre. So I wanted to have gig theatre. I wanted it to have lots of music, even though the original one that I did have music. But this one, I wanted it to have music throughout, especially because Angola has a very specific kind of music sound, and so does Brazil. So I kind of wrote a play that had a lot of poetry. So I'm just going to read 3 little parts of it, if that's okay. And yeah, I hope you guys like. Okay, so this just in. Another kid dead, shot in plain sight, caught in daylight. Another number, another statistic. He was black and was gifted. How many more must die for us to finally thrive? Not even in the house of the Lord are we allowed to survive. Given grace and mercy, mercy or grace, he stepped out of church and was forever erased. Never underestimate the power of the people. It will shock you what you do just in order to be equal. But fuck equal, it's just another sequel. Equality isn't progressive if the roots remain the same. While those in power evade the blame game, the youth is rising in this state of violence to no surprise. They're no longer silently disguised. They've learned from their foremothers to be silent as advised is a hefty price to pay when you aren't even humanized. So they gathered that simply yelling in the street won't stabilize their feet. It's time to level up and kill this cancer from the inside till the freedom is applied. To enslave a people, you must first make them dependable and secondly expendable. You feed them lies so they can't socially mobilize, keep the body, take the mind. It's why the never-ending cycle of the mental shackle prevails. We must educate ourselves. And these kids are diligent, stolen from their innocence, taken by the militant police who keeps on shaking up their peace. This is Brazil. Just 2 more. And then 1583, Ginga Bandi came, unrest in her name. A fighter from birth, ripped the cord of life that wrapped around her neck and almost stole her from earth. Hence the name Ginga, to twist and to turn, born into a war that caused her people to burn. But still she stayed, fought and hell raised. And while she traded, Angola was invaded and her royalties raided by the Portuguese. But her war, it never ended. It traveled across seas and landed here with ease. So you see, what happened then is the prophecy for now. The systems that stole from us then are still in place now. If you listen closely, you will understand how. You think that their sacrifice would suffice to pay the price for this misery. But when you erase history, it's not a mystery why we only know injury. We're still at the epicenter of failed systems forced to be made victims. But as true warriors, providers, survivors, it lies inside of us to remember, because what's worse than death And the last one. Okay. The idea of the Black burden is that we are born in and cast into the disadvantaged roles of the past. We see that here in the Meninos de Rua. The fear of the Black burden is the act of chasing away any trace of your Black race, denial of your Black face, the escape of your roots to appeal to white suits. We call that here branqueamento da pele. The myth of the Black burden is that there is no burden, that Black people love to wallow in crimes of the past as if they wished it last. We call that here me, me, me. The truth of the Black burden is the weight that you can't quite shake, invisible but present in every state. It's the grab of the purse, the rejection of a Black nurse, the sexualization of a Black arse, the grabbing of the hair like passing hands for grass, the negation of education that helps only half of the nation, the half of the nation whose daddies control inflation, the kids pushed to crap to make money they lack, the animalization of our features, the caging of us like creatures, the shoot and search procedures because we're guilty until our dead body proves us innocent, the preference of the lighter Black because it's close to white, but not as close as white is to cleanliness and therefore godliness, because God is what they imagined themselves to be. That's why Jesus is whiter than we. And it's with God, they put you in your place and you better step with haste. The creator of the Black burden is the white privilege. And the only escape from this images of pillages is the Black burden reversed, the wicked white supremacist curse, the Black power. Okay, that's it. I just wanted to also finally say, when I'm writing these stories, I try not to focus in trauma, but it was just very difficult to also write about things like Marielle Franco and then write about Queen Jinga and write about these two countries who, you know, in the reality have gone through such deep things. And especially if it's the first time, maybe, I don't know, a British audience is hearing these things, I also want them to just be aware of the social, political environment. And that's it. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Jinga. It's amazing. Your words are fantastic to end this because they actually are the representation of what we want to say, what we are trying to bring. And I know that we are in a very limited time, and I can see with the Q&A that there were no open questions. So I want to close it to give you guys all an opportunity to close with one word. I'll pose this simple question, which is, how do we represent the multitude, the plethora of identities that are in the Afro-Lusophone world, thinking of Europe, Africa, Brazil, and or even Asia, if we think of those Lusophone countries, that the plethora of identities that we have in the Afro-Lusophone world, in the world, to the Anglophone audience. How do you see that being represented? Let's go for you, Zinga.
As in, how do I see it represented at the moment, or how do I see it should be represented?
How it should.
Yikes. Oh, that's a very hard question. It's a little bit like what Hamida was saying, like, how do you, I think we should always try to get to the core of like what it feels like to be in that space. And I always feel like music is a very good way to feel that. I don't know how to reply to this question. I'm really on it. That's a big question, but I feel like through the art of music, because it helps us transcend to spaces and stuff. Yeah.
Fantastic. Hamida, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a very hard question, but I think we get giving voice to people who haven't had these voices, you know. So like this is, we've got to promote the connection, and the way of promoting connection is opening up for people who were not in the stage, were not in the so-called mainstream, were not able to have a proper audience, and who are, you know, in this small places just talking among themselves. Is how can we reach out? I think to reach out, I think is could be the word, and I think it has to be our fight.
That's definitely. And Onisi. Are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Here we go. I don't think there's any one easy answer, but building off what Xenia did and what Ramiro just said, with Xenia, we saw the embodiment, right, of language in her. And when Ramiro was talking about opportunities, I'm going to keep it real. Money and resources. And we have to find ways, even though there are so many translators here, we have to find ways to not always privilege the text, because there's so much other work that is not being written down, that is corporeal, that's embodied, that's being done in the streets, that's theater for social justice. But we continue to privilege the text, don't we? And that's part of the Western emphasis on the text. But for those of you with resources and universities, bring in artists and privilege the performance and the embodiment along with the text, and sometimes maybe even over the text.
Fantastic. With those words, I think we finish here. Thank you so much, you all. I am definitely inspired, and I can only say that with Xenia saying of how the workshop worked during the process of Firecracker, I can only describe it as magical, the moment of having 10 Black female Lusophone performers in one room. It literally filled my whole soul with joy. And to work as a dramaturg in that project was not only an honor, but a privilege. Thank you all three for bringing the Afro-Lusophone world to the Anglophone audience and beyond, because we know that once we translate it, it can even go further than just the Anglophone audience. Thank you so much for bringing this. I see on the Q&A that there are some questions about how to acquire Xenia's work. Xenia's and everybody's Twitter and social media handles on our website. Yes, Xenia.
So sorry to cut you. Basically, my name is pronounced Xenia, and I know
Xenia.
because sorry.
Sorry.
Obviously, no, it's fine. It's only because I recently changed my name, so I haven't spoken to you properly for you to know how to say it, but Xenia, yeah.
Xenia. There you go. I was wondering that which pronunciation he would have taken. Oh, Xenia, that's perfect. Yeah. That's perfect. Xenia. Xenia, thank you so much. And thank you, Onisi, thank you, Ramiro, for taking part, because we needed to have that. We needed to put it out there. And I can't ever have thought that we would manage to gather three wonderful researchers and practitioners together to talk about this. I am so excited. It's crazy. But to do some housekeeping of our ending, thank you so much, all incredible panelists, but also to all of you for joining us in this conversation. We will now take 11 minutes break, not 15, but do join us at 6:15 when Out of the Wings co-creator and director, Professor Catherine Boyle, will present a film screening and Q&A of Fatima Pearson's Race, Gender, and Theatre, and chairing a discussion with filmmaker Dr. Juan Maria Cordones Cook. Please also do stay in touch with us at Out of the Wings. You can find full information about our work at our website, ootwfestival.com, or via the various links in our social media accounts, and you'll see on the slide during the break. Thank you all so very much, and we do look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon.